36, recognizing and commending 2011 Georgia USGA women's golf team on winning the USGA Women's State Team Championship and inviting them to be recognized by the House. Resolution by Representative Nix, 69, on the life and memory of Dr. Charles Hudson, inviting the family of Dr. Charles Hudson to be recognized by the House. Resolution by Representative Burns, 157, commending Eddie Pollard for being selected as Georgia's 2011 National Distinguished Principal, inviting him to be recognized by the House of Representatives. Following resolutions are privileged resolutions being read for the first time today for adoption. A resolution by Representative Clark, 104th, honoring and celebrating the 100th birthday of Margaret Tanner. Resolution by Representative Dickey, 136, commending Victor Hedgepeth, Peach County High School's 2012 star teacher. Resolution by Representative Smith, 131st, commending United Technologies Corporation and recognizing February 23, 2012 as United Technologies Corporation Employee Scholar Day at the Capitol. Resolution by Representative Rogers, 26, on the life and memory of Mary Elaine Philall Hall. Resolution by Representative Dickey, the 136, commending Scott Turner, Lamar County Comprehensive High School 2012 star teacher. Resolution by Representative Dickey, the 136, commending John Tavius Barkley, Lamar County Comprehensive High School's 2012 star student. A resolution by Representative Dudgeon, 24th, commending the Georgia Tech Cooperative Education Program on its 100th anniversary and for its centennial celebration during 2012-2013 school year. Resolution by Representative Purcell, 159th, recognizing commending Kenneth Smalls Muddlerow. A resolution by Representative Parrish, 156th, recognizing commending Emmanuel County on its bicentennial. A resolution by Representative England, 108th, commending Megan McNally, Barrow County School System-Wide Teacher of the Year. A resolution by Representative England, 108th, commending Ryan McDermott, Appalachia High School and Barrow County Schools 2012 System-Wide Star Teacher. A resolution by Representative England, 108th, commending Jesse Walls, Appalachia High School and Barrow County Schools 2012 System-Wide Star Student. Resolution by Representative England, 108th, commending Whitney Neufeld, Winder, Barrow High School's 2012 star teacher. And a resolution by Representative England, 108th, commending Spencer Giddens, Winder, Barrow High School's 2012 star student through the privileged resolutions.
Is there objection to the adoption of the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none. The resolutions are adopted. I'm going to ask the clerk to ring the bell and let's get some members back in here. What purpose does the Speaker Pro Tem rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to ask that this House immediately transmit H.R. 1162 to the Senate.
Clerk will read. All right, we don't need to read. We just voted. Is there objection to the lady's motion that this House immediately transmit House Resolution 1162 to the State Senate of Georgia? Chair hears none. It is so ordered. It is now on its way to the Senate. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 687. House Bill 687.
House Bill 687 by Representative Taylor, 79th, a bill to be entitled Act being entitled 35 relating to general provisions for law enforcement officers and agencies so as to acquire persons, companies licensed to provide alarm monitoring services to utilize alarm verification in order to preserve valuable municipal and county law enforcement resources. This bill having been for the House Committee, Public Safety, Homeland Security. The committee recommends the bill pass by way of committee substitute. The bill is being read today for the third time. What you got, Paul?
Chair recognizes Representative Taylor to present the bill. Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, bring before you House Bill 687 as a committee substitute. This bill is backed by the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police, the Alarm Industry Associations, the Georgia Sheriff's Association, the National Sheriff's Association, as well as the State Fire Marshal. In essence, what this bill does is proposal provides supporting documentation for alarm verification. This legislation mandates that 2 calls be placed to alarm users by a monitoring center to confirm site activity before seeking a police response to a home or a business. The essence of this, the 2 calls have been shown to eliminate up to 50% of the responses needed to sites due to false alarms. False alarms in residential and business burglar alarm calls are in the 80 to 90%. In a lot of municipalities are false alarms. It uses up a lot of police resources, officer time. It takes an average of 20 minutes in an urban area, much longer in a rural area, to check out and secure a premises. What this mandates, a lot of the alarm companies do it as a matter of practice, but it's not mandated. What this does is mandates that a second number be called. What this does not do is interfere with panic button type things, fire, or a duress type button, or a medical emergency. Those would be dispatched immediately. Again, this is just conserving scarce police resources. It has zero fiscal impact, and does not. And is supported by all the associations that I named previously. Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to take any questions.
You have a question or two? Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Amerson to your right for a question.
My question pertains to page 2, line 27 through 29. I realize what you're trying to do, but it says, or a panic or robbery in process where crime in process has been verified. Well, what, you know, if somebody's in a panic, there's no way you're going to get it verified before they need help.
It says it shall not be required in the case of a fire alarm or a panic button. The second call is not needed. They will dispatch immediately, sir.
Yeah, but it finishes up by saying has been verified. That's the part that bothers me.
True by video or audible means, which would be the audible means would be the panic alarm. So.
You have other questions? Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the Chairman of the Rules Committee, Chairman Meadows, to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that my police chief had 3,523 of these calls?
Yes, sir. I believe the gentleman knows. I did speak with my chief and the head of the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. It did say your chief did report that, sir.
Further question.
Yield, sir.
Is it not true that 3,500 of that 3,523 were false alarms?
That's correct, sir.
Is it, further question,
Yield, sir.
is it not true that it will save the police a lot of headache, a lot of time, a lot of effort?
It just conserves very scarce manpower. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes, you have another question. Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's laudable. My question is if an alarm company does not comply, what are the consequences?
Really, I don't think there's. It's just it mandates in the code. I don't know that we have a lot of recourse with that, but the industry is pushing this hard and is pushing hard within the alarm company community to really make this a mandate.
If I assume that if we do not get compliance, that we could come back later and put in some consequences.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You have no further questions.
I yield the well, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill. The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of House Bill 687 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of House Bill 687, the ayes are 132, the nays are 9. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 769. House Bill 769.
House Bill 769, Representative Geisinger, 48th, a bill to be entitled Title 46 relating to Consumers Utility Council Division, so provide that until such time as the division is appropriately funded, it should not be necessary to file copies of filings with the Public Service Commission with the division. Bill having been before the House Committee on Energy, Utilities, Telecommunications. The committee recommends the bill do pass. The bill is being read today for the third time.
Chair recognizes Representative Geisinger to present the bill. Representative Geisinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 769 is basically the companion bill to the bill that we had yesterday, which was 786, that Representative Hembry had passed out of this body. What this bill simply does is the same thing that the other one did for the insurance industry. This does it for the Public Service Commission. We have been storing boxes of copies for 13 years, and it's costing us a fortune. And the important thing is that it's not necessary, and this legislation will clean that up, especially when you realize that the information is available online. Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I yield the will.
Don't appear to have any questions. Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 769 will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 769. The ayes are 152, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 811. House Bill 811.
House Bill 811 by Representative Powell, the 171st, a bill to be entitled Title 45 relating to management, budgetary, financial affairs, so as to provide for an automatic fee adjustments in cases where funds are not appropriated in certain amounts for specified purposes when certain fees are imposed for those purposes. To provide for definitions, procedures, conditions, and limitations. Bill having been for the House Committee on Governmental Affairs, the committee recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. The bill is being read today for the third time.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I am presenting to you House Bill 811. This will solve a problem that we've been facing for decades as to how to make sure that when we promise the voters and citizens of this state that certain funds that are collected from them will be utilized for a certain purpose, that we actually follow through on that. And the mechanism for doing this, absent a constitutional amendment which would require that appropriations received from that go to that purpose, is to approach it from the other direction, which is to keep the legislature's ability to appropriate as it sees fit and as it sees the need, but provide that the fee that is collected will be reduced if the full amount collected is not appropriated, that the fee will be reduced to equal the amount that is appropriated. So it will truly be a fee for service. If we appropriate $3 million for tires, then we collect a 50-cent fee. If we appropriate $6 million for removal of old tire dumps, then we collect the $1 that's currently in the statute. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will yield the well.
You have a question?
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Minority Caucus, Representative Thomas, for a question to your left.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
So I have some questions about the mechanism by which this works. I see that there's a base kind of amount of revenue that's set, and then if the revenues, if the money that's brought in on the fee doesn't go to that purpose, then the fee is reduced so that it would, and I think it's a 20% reduction, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And let's say that same thing happens over 4 years, so we reduce 2020, 2020. At what point can the fee increase back to the original amount?
When the legislature starts appropriating according to the increase. The formula is such that you take the previous year's appropriation, you add 20% that the fee would have generated if the fee were fully implemented, and that becomes the target appropriation. If the target appropriation is in fact adopted by the legislature, then the fee would then be increased.
Okay, thank you.
You have another question if you yield.
Yes, sir, I will yield for one more.
Chair recognizes Representative Battles to your right for a question.
Would my friend yield?
Yes.
Is it not true, until this point, we have not had a mechanism at all in making sure that these fees get to its intended purpose? And is it not true that this is an attempt to actually fund some of those things that most of our constituents thought were being funded?
That is correct. And it does so in a way that continues to allow us discretion to appropriate, whereas a constitutional amendment would not give us that discretion.
And I do appreciate your bill.
Thank you, sir. If there are no other questions, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well.
You do have one more if you yield.
I'll yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of House Bill 811 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 811. The ayes are 151, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 730. House Bill 730.
House Bill 730 by Representative Hembry of the 67th. A bill to be entitled Act amending Code Section 369121 and Title 50 relating to competitive award requirements and general authority, duties, procedure relative to state purchasing, respectively, so as to provide for certain contract and bidding requirements for governmental entities and Department of Administrative Services relative to public works construction contracts. Bill has been for the House Committee on Industrial Relations. The committee recommends that this bill do pass. It's being read today for the third time.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hembry to present the bill. Chairman Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like you to support House Bill 730. I refer to this as the Fair and Open Competition in Government Contracting Act. It simply says that on government construction projects, bidders cannot be required to participate in collective bargaining agreements with labor unions. A government-mandated project labor agreement is a contract that requires construction projects to be awarded only to companies that agree to recognize unions as the representatives of their employees on that job. The government must use union hiring halls and obtain workers and pay into union benefit programs and pension plans. This is taxpayer money. This bans local contractors from the bidding process, and this is wrong. Local electricians, local plumbers, and other non-union contractors who live in the community and pay taxes to the local governments are banned from bidding on local construction projects. This is wrong. Unions represent a small percentage of the construction labor market in Georgia. So, if project labor agreements are utilized in Georgia, the workforce would be brought in from other states. You would have a union plumber from Illinois working on a taxpayer-funded project in Douglasville, while the local plumber who's forced to lay off employees because he can't find work. This is wrong. I understand that DeKalb County is operating public projects that require labor unions and labor workers. Other local bureaucrats may be cutting deals with union bosses demanding similar requirements. My bill will stop this activity now and in the future. These special interest handouts increase construction costs that are being paid for by Georgia taxpayers. This bill is about fair and open competition. This bill helps small businesses grow. This bill will reduce construction costs and create jobs for Georgians. This bill will allow that local electrician, the guy that may be your neighbor or go to church with you, it will allow him to bid fairly on a local project that his tax-paying dollars are paying for. This is a jobs bill for Georgia. This is right for the citizens of Georgia. Don't use Georgia taxpayer money to pay a union contractor from Illinois. Pass this bill. It's the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to yield for any questions, and I urge your support of House Bill 730.
You have some questions.
I'll be glad to yield.
Chair recognizes the Minority Leader of the House, Representative Abrams, to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Absolutely.
Sir, can you list the counties or cities where contractors have been banned from bidding?
It's my understanding that DeKalb County, there exists right now, and this will prohibit that from happening in the future. Who knows? You know, there are projects going on around the state. There's projects in Douglasville going on right now. I don't know if some bureaucrat cut a deal with a union boss. I don't know that. This law would put it in place saying you can't do that. Let's make it a level playing field. Let's say to that electrician and that plumber that, hey, you live in that community. You should have every right to bid on that project that your taxpaying dollars are paying for, just like anyone else. It opens up the process. It makes it fair. And I believe this is the right thing for the people of Georgia and for those tax dollars.
So in answer to my question, you do not know of a county where, or a city where anyone has been banned from
DeKalb
bidding?
County.
DeKalb County does not, is it not true that DeKalb County encourages but has never banned a single bid for a contract?
Like I said, DeKalb County, I understand, that exists, and who knows? I don't know if that may exist in Douglas County or any other county, but what I'm saying is that how can you be against fairness? How can you be against fairness? All this says is that everybody, and you know what? I have faith and confidence in the Georgia workforce. I have faith and confidence in that electrician to go and be able to bid on that project. And let the county or the city decide, but let that local person have a chance. Don't cut him out of the process.
Sir, will you further yield?
Absolutely.
Having not established that there are any counties or cities that actually ban folks from bidding, is it not true that under Georgia law, these local districts do allow small contractors to bid, but often there are bond requirements that tend to exceed the ability of a local electrician to bid on the major contract? So typically these are contractors who bid as subcontractors as part of a larger bid, and indeed there are no laws on the books that preclude them from participating in those subcontracting bids.
I disagree with you. Just like, as I said, I disagree with you on the issue of the counties.
Can you tell me about a single county or city where these small contractors, if I may complete my question, small contractors that you reference, individual plumbers, individual electricians, they typically are not allowed to bid on major contracts because they do not possess the bonding requirements. Can you tell me of a single city or county that has precluded someone who had the bonding ability from being allowed to bid on these contracts?
I have. And I can just say to this, you and I will probably never agree on this. And the reason why is I believe in the fundamental principles of the free enterprise system. I believe that individuals, no matter who they are, have the right to work hard, to start a business, and we as taxpayers and as a legislative body owe it to them to give them a chance to fairly bid on a project. So you and I probably philosophically will never agree on this, but I believe this is the right thing for the people of Georgia. It's fair, it's open, and it says that we believe that the system will work properly if everyone is allowed the right to bid.
Will you further yield?
Absolutely.
Mr. Hembry, I agree that you and I may have different philosophical positions, but I'm not certain how that applies to the factual questions that I'm asking you. I'm not asking about your philosophical position. I'm asking for factual information based on the presentation you made from the well. So if we could limit to that posture, my question is, can you demonstrate empirically, not through philosophical concern, but empirically that the solution that you are proposing has a problem to solve?
It does have a problem to solve. And again, I've partially answered your question. You're a learned attorney. I'm just a representative from Winston, Georgia. But I believe that the workforce in Georgia is skilled and qualified. And I believe that we should make sure that if a taxpayer-funded project is taking place in this state of Georgia, then Georgians should at least be allowed to bid on a project. Why should we send money to a union program with a union contractor in New York when we have electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters and many others who are laying people off in Georgia because they can't go through the process of bidding? That is wrong.
One final question, sir. Given that one of the largest unions in the state of Georgia are indeed the trade unions in the state of Georgia, would you be amenable to amending this legislation to guarantee that those trade unionists, in fact, the majority of whom, the folks that you're speaking to, they are members of those unions, would you be amenable to limiting these bid contracts to only allowing for Georgian union members in order to answer the very question that you raised about making certain that we're hiring Georgians who seek to have these bids?
You just answered the point, the question. You're giving an advantage. Again, my point is to make the level playing field for everybody. Make it level for everybody. Don't say that you have got to join this union just so you can bid on the project, because most small business people, whether they're a plumber or electrician, they don't have the means. They're usually operating on a small scale, so they don't have the means to be a part of this mass union group that you're talking about. So no, it would be unfair to have an amendment to this. This makes it a level playing field for all Georgians, and no, I don't agree with that. because I believe that the principles of free enterprise will always overshadow any set aside, any special treatment, or any program that you do for an individual or a group.
Thank you, sir.
You yield for further questions?
Absolutely. I'll be glad to yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Gardner to your left.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, yes.
Is it not true that we are all interested in our neighbor plumber getting a job?
If you pass this bill, you will be.
Is it not further true that that plumber probably will have an assistant working with him?
Maybe.
Can the gentleman tell me what would happen if the assistant were to be injured on the job? Would the plumber have either workers' comp insurance or some kind of health insurance for the person working for him?
That's not relevant to what this is about. This is about the bidding process. This is about giving that plumber a chance to go and present what kind of insurance program they have, what kind of guidelines they will meet, what kind of employees and programs. This just opens the door and makes it fair for your local plumber who lives next door to you. Why would you want to let someone from another state come here to Georgia to work on a local project? Why would you want to do that? How is that fair? How is that fair to the worker in Georgia? We're just leveling the playing field. We're just saying you can't discriminate against a local business person.
Is it not further true that I'm not sure it's fair for me to have to pay for the emergency room visit for somebody who has no health insurance?
But that's not relevant to the bidding process. The bidding process should be open to the contractors in the state of Georgia.
And the plumber, does the plumber need to have health insurance or workers'
That's
comp
part
insurance?
of the bid program. They'll have to determine that. This bill, all this bill does is say, hey,
So
let them have a
required.
chance.
I'm
Let them
sorry.
have a chance.
If the gentleman will yield, I didn't understand that that was part of the bid process.
I'm sure.
Do you yield?
Absolutely, yes.
Chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Lindsay, to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield for a
Yes,
couple
sir.
questions?
I see your name on top of the bill, so I'm glad to hope you're supportive.
I just have two simple questions. I just want to make sure I understand, given some of the other questions we've heard here. Is this a right-to-work state?
It is.
Does this bill simply further Georgia's long-established policy as a right-to-work state?
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you very much for bringing the bill.
You have a lot of questions.
All right. I've taken two from this side and one from this side. I think that's fair. Hey, this is about being a pro-business state. This is about that contractor, whether it be a plumber, a heating and air conditioning guy, you know them all. They live in your districts. All this says, folks, is to make the playing field level and fair. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the right thing to do. How could you vote against fairness? Make Georgia continue to be a great pro-business state and vote for the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. We have other members that desire to speak on the measure. Chair recognizes Representative Flood to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief. I was really trying to ascertain, as the gentleman from Winston, Georgia was presenting, exactly what problem he was trying to solve. This appears to me to be a solution in search of a problem. He could not cite a single city where contractors were prohibited from bidding, no county. And Georgia is indeed a pro-business state, and I don't know that there's anything in this legislation that affects our pro-business stance one way or the other. But it sounds to me like a lot of much ado about nothing. This is fear-mongering. It's this Chicken Little saying the sky is falling because we've got to do something, we've got to do something. About what? There is one other concern that I have, which is something that this General Assembly wrestles with on a very frequent basis, and that is with regard to local control. So if indeed DeKalb County or Douglas County or Douglasville or Peachtree City or Tyrone or whatever community in this state decides that they want to enter into agreements that their elected bodies have decided makes the best sense for that community, who are we from DeKalb or Fulton to tell someone in Chatham how they should run their organization, how they should run their city, their county government, their school board? Where do we draw the line between local control and the General Assembly making decisions for other elected officials on how they go about the process of awarding contracts? Again, I wanted to just be brief, but it appears to me like this is so much to do about nothing. This is a solution indeed trying to find a problem that, ladies and gentlemen, just doesn't appear to exist. So I would urge you to emphatically vote no on House Bill 730. Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I yield the well.
You do have questions.
I'll take a question.
The chair recognizes Representative Setzler to your right for a question.
Yes, sir.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Do you believe it's appropriate for local governments to write contracts that expressly require union employees be used on a job?
Do I believe that local governments have the right to decide for themselves how they should run their local governments? The answer would be yes.
So for the record, you believe it should be legal in this state for local governments to narrow down the pool of those that may compete for public contracts to just those that have union shops? You do believe that?
I believe that local governments ought to have the right to determine for themselves what makes most appropriate sense for the local government. I don't believe that the state should tell a local government how they should develop and assess and determine who gets contracts.
Okay, do you believe that local governments ought to have the power, if they so choose, to decide to, if a mayor or a councilman wanted to award a no-bid contract to a family member, do you think they ought to have the power to do that legally?
I think that the local governments have the opportunity to decide for themselves what is in the best interest of the local government.
So I'm hearing you say if a local government believes, and I want to make sure I understand this, that if a local government believes that it's in the best interest of that government body to issue a no-bid contract to a family member, you think they ought to have the power to do that?
I think if the local government determines for themselves what is in the best interest of the local government, that is the local decision.
Okay, just wanted to hear you state that for the record. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you continue to yield?
I'll yield for one more question, sir.
Chair recognizes the chair of the subcommittee chair of the Appropriations Committee, Chairman Houston, to your right for a question.
Yes.
I applaud your belief in local government. Do you have the same belief in state government?
With regard to?
Do you believe that the federal government has the right to require the state government to require people to have health insurance?
I failed to see the relevance of that question to this conversation.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Dukes to speak to the bill. Representative Dukes.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I've been a contractor in this community for, rather our business has been in existence in the state of Georgia for well over 60 years. And while I was perplexed, Representative Henry, I was going to ask you a question, but you left the well. I was trying to figure out exactly where we were going with this, because I've worked here for 30 or 40 years myself. I've done work in many of the municipalities throughout this state, but I have never ever seen where that a local government or a state or a municipality or a city has ever placed any requirement in their bid documents that required for unions to be the sole source for contracting. The state of Georgia is a right-to-work state, and we believe in that emphatically. It is not even a big union state. So I was wanting to ask you where this had taken place and how much money had it cost the citizens of any community. I think while your intentions might be good, I'm trying to figure out really where are we going with this and why do we have it. Like I said earlier, as a contractor in this state, I have never ever been confronted with a restriction to participate in a contract based on the fact that I did not have that I was not a part of the union. Union subcontractors and union contractors compete against me every day. Most of them I'm pretty successful in. Some of them give the state of Georgia a better price for the things that we do. But our process here in the state of Georgia is based on most instances, a low bid contract, and we don't do that. So voting for it or against it, I guess. I'm trying to figure out why do we need it. And that would have been my question to you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Williams to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've listened to the bill being presented by my friend West Georgia, and I'm a little, let me just sum it up. I've heard Taft-Hartley explained, and that's a federal law. We don't have Taft-Hartley in Georgia contracts. I've spent almost 14 years on development authority, have built hundreds of millions of dollars worth of buildings and let huge contracts, have never had a small business person denied because some big union came in. I'm sorry, I know that it's popular to say New York and Illinois, that scares us to death. But that's just not the case in Georgia. Georgia's a right-to-work state. It's not a state that has a guarantee for union participation. Now, I just don't want to see this become a union-kicking bill that makes a 30-second political highlight. That's not right, because there is not a city or county in this state that anybody in here can come up and say this small businessman lost this opportunity because of a union. That's just not true. Most people in my neck of the woods, small community, rural, and they tell me constantly, especially my Republican friends, that the one thing they want is government to get off their backs and let them do business. I think it would do great if we came up here one year and did 50 bills and went home. We keep talking about getting off people's backs and we keep piling bills on. And they're just, get out of the way. And let me tell you from a personal standpoint about unions. And I'm not an anti-union person, I'm very pro-union. But this was a metamorphosis, this was a growth thing. Do you know that most of the unions in this country until about 25, 30 years ago, most of the good jobs, African Americans couldn't even get in the union. They wouldn't let us become pipe fitters, they would not let us become plumbers, would not let us become electricians. Unions are not the big bad wolf. They were to us for a long time because they were the boogeyman. You couldn't get in a union if you were African American. But on the other hand, many of you have middle class status because of good paying jobs that would not have been possible without some union input. We're number 5 in the country in business friendly. I had never seen anybody yet say we got too many unions. Not when they start talking about Georgia. That's not a problem. It is not a problem because it is non-existent. There is no small businessman losing business because of a union. We lose business as small business folk because of bonds. And the state of Georgia could help small business people by waiving those bonds for some of our big construction contracts. That's how you help small business, by making business easier to do. It is not the big bad wolf at the door, supposedly the labor unions. Let's write some legislation to make it easier for small business to do business in this state on state projects. Lastly, small business lost the office supply contract in this state about 7 years ago. All of your small business owners that were in the office supply business were suddenly thrown out of business because we issued our contract to a company in Minnesota. Oh, another bad name. But in Minnesota, they got to business. None of us jumped up and said, let's write some legislation where our small office supply people can do business with the state of Georgia. That's a fact, and I can pull some companies up that went out of business because we put them out of business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes the minority leader of the House, Representative Abrams, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come to the well today on behalf of the states of Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, and South Carolina. Please allow me to read an open letter from them to you. Dear Georgia House of Representatives, we write today to thank you in advance for the passage of HB 730, what we refer to as the Georgia Foreign Employment Act. Each of our states continue to struggle with high unemployment rates. 8.1% in Alabama, 9.5% in South Carolina, 9.9% in Florida, and 8.7% in Tennessee. Our unemployment rates are equal to or lower than your own rate of 9.7%, and we have been at a loss for how to boost jobs for our citizens. We've watched with envy as you plan to invest billions of dollars into major public works projects across your state, including the T-Splost. Yet because these funds would be controlled by local governments, we understood that you would likely be compelled to actually spend these funds at home with your own people. By requiring local bids through some of these contracts, that's the only guarantee that the money is spent inside the county or the city or the state, letting local governments make a decision about where they want to put their funds. Indeed, why would any state struggling in last place in job creation spend their hard-earned tax dollars to hire contractors from out of town? Because we understand that these bids aren't about small contracts. Indeed, most of these small public works contracts are bid through small bids and no bids, but these are about the major contracts, the big contracts that are coming through your pipeline in the next couple of years. We watched this money with envy and we wondered how could we get a piece of it. So we were excited to see that HB 730 has come to the floor, which removes the ability of local governments to guarantee that their workers at home receive first preference on these jobs. In North Georgia, along your western boundary, near the South Carolina-Georgia transportation corridor, and along the trucking routes of South Georgia, we know you will be spending millions of dollars in politely hiring our cheaper labor to build your roads, dig your utility trenches, and develop your public works. And we are also pleased that you are solving the last protection that you have in place for Georgia contractors. Now, as conservative states ourselves, we know that the building and trade unions are among the most conservative voters in the nation, second only to the farmers that you abandoned last year. Most of these members punch the conservative ticket every time. And yet you have decided to tell these men and women and their families that their local tax dollars should fund families in Birmingham, Alabama, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Charleston, South Carolina, and Tallahassee, Florida. We wanted to thank you for the $1.5 billion that will be coming from North Georgia under the T-Splost, the $1.3 billion from the Georgia Mountains, the $3 billion allocated to South Georgia, and the $3 billion from Northeast Georgia. Now, we understand that the authors of HB 730 argue for fairness, which we welcome. It's a terrific word that means we don't have to compete on a level playing field. Fairness is such a fantastic way to hide the effect of what will be accomplished here. Your governor has already announced plans to spend $300 million on water projects, which would also go to outside bidders, likely companies that can underbid from Florida, where our state dollars have built these companies into international players. Individual contractors rarely vote and rarely bid on these major contracts because they can't meet the state requirements. And because we know how difficult it is for small and medium-sized contractors to secure these jobs unless they are aligned with a larger company, we know that you'll get to evade the rules set to help protect your small businesses. And what you'll be doing is funding large companies from outside the state of Georgia because they don't work here anymore. That's because the bond requirements set by federal and state governments are too high for most of these small contractors to meet unless they are part of a union bid. So we appreciate your willingness to ignore local control in favor of outsiders raking in billions of dollars of taxpayer funds and shipping those dollars over the border into our states. We will continue to protect our own, and we thank you for your unilateral disarmament. We understand that you were upset that Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana were getting all the buzz for targeting unions, but because Georgia is a right-to-work state, you were at a loss for how to score points for yourself. So we're impressed that you decided to risk the loss of thousands of jobs for Georgians in order to show the trade unions who's boss. Your level playing field invites thousands to race into your state and take your jobs. In the next few years, your money will fund our state coffers and build our bank accounts. We'll certainly be happy to continue to thank you and compete with you for every new company and for workers looking for a place to live. With your money in our pockets, we'll be able to offer them a great, fair deal. Thank you for your hard work on behalf of our citizens and for creating jobs for your neighbors. Sincerely, the workers of Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Had questions, but she has yielded the well. Is there any, what purpose does Representative Smith rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true that in the state of
What
Georgia...
purpose do you rise, Representative?
Question. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that in the state of Georgia, in order to be a plumber, you must be certified?
Well, I'm not going to get into the technical requirements of these things, but if the gentleman so states.
Is it not also true, Mr. Speaker, that in the state of Georgia, in Augusta, Georgia, the first ever air passenger terminal in the history of Augusta was built not with union workers, but with qualified workers in and of the state of Georgia?
I'm sure the gentleman believes that statement to be true.
And it is also not true that in the state of Georgia, electricians must be certified in order to be electricians for quality work for the state.
I'm sure the gentleman believes that statement to be true.
It is also not true that in Burke County, there will be 2 nuclear reactors built, and we've not heard any problems from union inclusion or introversion in this state or in this process.
I am sure the gentleman believes that to be true, and I think that's 4 parliamentary inquiries.
Thank you. I've used up all my parliamentary inquiries, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much.
What purpose does Representative Hatfield rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, I was going to ask this to the bill sponsor and the minority leader, but was unable to. But I'm curious as to the chair's interpretation of on line 17 when it talks about pre-hire agreements or project labor agreements. And I know on line 18, collective bargaining agreements, what that would mean, and everyone understands that. But what would pre-hire agreements or project labor agreements encompass?
I'm having them get me a copy of the bill, Representative. I haven't read that part. What line and page?
Page 1, line 17.
You're asking for a clarification as to the meaning of pre-hire agreement?
Yes, sir. And,
I think you've got an answer coming to you right there.
Okay. That'll be fine.
Does that help?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 730 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. You got to pay. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 730. The ayes are 104, the nays are 64. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 640. House Bill 640.
House Bill 640 by Representative Rogers, 26. The bill will be entitled Act Amending Code Section 333614 relating to exhaustion of rights by claimants against insolvent insurers so as to correct certain language to provide internal consistency. Bill having been before the House Committee on Insurance. Committee recommends to pass. Bill is being read today for its third time.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the Higher Education Committee, Chairman Rogers, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I present to you what I call a code revision correction that should have been made last year or should have passed last year. This bill cleans up language of a bill that I was fortunate to pass 2 years ago dealing with a particular issue with an insurance company that went insolvent. And that's all it simply does, and I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
You've got a question.
Okay.
Do you yield?
I'll be glad to.
Chair recognizes Representative Byrd to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Be glad to.
Is it not true that this company, SUS, Southeastern U.S., chose not to participate in the insolvency pool?
No, ma'am, they did not choose to. They were not allowed to. They were a captive insurance company, and before they became a regular insurance company, accidents happened previous to that. So to answer to your question, no, they were not allowed to.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'll
No
ask
further
you.
questions.
Thank you, sir.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 640 will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? All members voted. If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 640, the ayes are 160, the nays are 7. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. If you have an announcement and you haven't checked in with the messenger, please do so now. Please do so now. We're going to be completing page photographs at the rostrum immediately upon adjournment. What purpose does Chairman McCall rise?
Make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
I'd like to move that the rules of the House be suspended and allow a bill to be read the first time and signed through the committee, please, sir.
Clerk will read a caption.
Bill by Representative McCall, 30th. The bill to be entitled Act amend titles 34, 49 relating to labor, industrial relations, social services, respectively, so as to create the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Services Board, to amend Title 30 relating to Georgia Industry for the Blind, so as to transfer direction, supervision of industries to the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency.
On the motion of the gentleman that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? The chair hears none. It is so ordered. Human Relations and Aging. Okay, we're going on to announcements. House will be in order. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I just want to let everybody know for planning purposes that we'll be coming back next Monday at 10 o'clock. So that there's no confusion. I'm talking about next Monday week from now, 6 to 5 days, whatever it is. We'll be coming at 10 so that you can plan your time at home accordingly. Thanks.
Chair recognizes Chairman Morris for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Banks and Banking Committee will be meeting upon adjournment in 406 in the CLOB. We will be voting on 3 bills. So if you could get there as soon as possible, I sure would appreciate it. 406 in the CLOB. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Golick for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Judiciary Non-Civil Committee will not meet this afternoon. Judiciary Non-Civil will not meet, but will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. A notice will be sent with the room assignment. The Ramsey Subcommittee will be meeting upon adjournment in room 132 on the metal theft legislation. Ramsey Subcommittee in room 132 upon adjournment, metal theft legislation. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Maxwell for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the Retirement Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment in room 403. We should be about 15 minutes, but I'd like to have a quorum there if I could. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Chairman Williams for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Regulated Industries Committee will meet shortly after adjournment in room 515.
Chair recognizes Chairman Chanel for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This announcement relates to subcommittees of the Ways and Means Committee. The Sales Tax Subcommittee will meet on adjournment. The Ad valorem Subcommittee will meet 30 minutes after adjournment. The Income Tax Subcommittee will meet 1 hour after adjournment. And the Public Finance and Policy will not meet today, but will meet tomorrow at a time to be announced later.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 3 o'clock today in 606 the CLOB. We will meet at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jacobs for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Jacobs Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee will meet at 3:15 in 506 of the CLOB. That is both a time and location change. 3:15, 506 CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Casas for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Subcommittee on Academic Achievement and Curriculum is meeting immediately upon adjournment, room 514. Please be there so we can have a quorum.
Chair recognizes Chairman Smith for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, the Natural Resources and Environment Committee will be meeting in 606 CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Setzler for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two announcements. First, the Cobb County Legislative Delegation will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. in room 515. We'll be discussing local legislation and local reapportionment. Tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m., 515 LOB. Also, the Academic Innovation Subcommittee of House Education will be meeting tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. in room 515 and taking up HB 836. Thanks.
Chair recognizes Representative Nix for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Education Subcommittee on Academic Support will meet as scheduled at 3 o'clock, room 514 CLOB. 3 o'clock, room 514 CLOB.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hembry for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Industrial Relations Committee will meet upon adjournment in 415 CLOB. 415 CLOB upon adjournment, Industrial Relations. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Sims for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Intergovernmental Coordination Committee will meet today at 4 p.m. in 403. 4 p.m. Need you there. We've got about 6 bills. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move this House now adjourn until 10 a.m. Thursday, February 23rd, 2012.
On the motion of the Majority Leader, that this House adjourn until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes clearly have it. This House will be adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.